Okay, while I was in Vietnam, my name was Avery Taylor, but the Army knew me as Henry A. Taylor.
It was Bill Meeks. I was a Lance Corporal E3 in the Marine Corps in 1967 through 1969.
My name is Patrick Ramsey. I was in the Marine Corps, MOS of 6214. It was aviation and electronics, and I served anywhere north of Da Nang in I Corps, working on the old CH-34 helicopters.
My name is James Maddox. I was an E5 specialist, served in Vietnam from April of 1970 to January of 1972. I was a military intelligence specialist.
My full name is David Arthur Edwards. I was a sergeant in Vietnam in 1966. I went over there in 66 and 67. I came home in 67. I was over 13 months.
I'm Wayne Reynolds. I served in Vietnam in 1968-69. I was a medic. Actually served most of my time as a medevac medic.
Anthony W. Aldeball. I was a captain in the Air Force. I served 71, 72, and 73.
My mother was terrified. She had lost 2 brothers in World War II. I knew I was going, so I might as well go then. And I actually volunteered to go. But scared, not until I got there.
As a young man, I always knew I was going to get to go in the military service. That was just something everybody accepted because we had the draft. I had just completed college, and at that time, nobody was hiring a young man who was eligible for the draft. You couldn't get a job because they knew that you were going to get drafted, and sure enough, I did a couple of months later.
I was in school. I grew up in Norwalk, Connecticut, and I was at a community college, and I went over to the draft board because I was going to spend an extra semester at the community college. And as a naive 19-year-old, I told them what I was going to do, and they said, "Oh yeah, no problem, we won't bother you." By the time I registered for class, they had changed my draft status to 1A, and I was on my way to getting drafted.
So it was north of DMZ. So we just honked around to the left, and then it flamed out. So, and we flew in ships of 3, cells of 3. We call them cells. And so we descended down, and the other 2 went on. And so I saw my life flashing in front of me. I said, well, I'm supposed to get married in a couple months. Or in January 15th, actually.
My lowest was, I was visited by some Army MPs, but it wasn't for me, it was for my brother. They wanted to ship him over there, and I didn't want him there. I didn't sign the waiver, he couldn't go. The most terrifying, I don't know, probably the opening of TET, 68. I got to experience that with them. There is a scene in Full Metal Jacket where they shows hitting the gate and all that. Well, I got to experience that. And I was in a foxhole with an M60.
Some soldiers got drunk that night and started pounding on the door on my wall, and were saying, well, let's go get the nigger. And I thought, okay, I have a locker full of weapons, so I went in and got a .45 and a M16 and loaded them both and waited for them to come through the door. They never did. I didn't sleep that night. So the next morning, got up, I showered, went over to the mess hall, and the guys who were doing it, who had been pounding on my door, were in the mess hall. And very calmly, I went over to them and said to the guy, all of them, they were sitting together, I said, I'm the nigger that you were pounding on the door, and so when you're finished with your dinner, with your breakfast, let's us go out and have a little discussion about what you want to do to me. I got a call from the company commander asking, I need to talk to you, Maddox. And so, okay, fine. I didn't know what I'd done. So he said, I hear you had an issue last night. I said, no. Some guys got drunk, and they wanted to beat me, and so now that the sun's up, I'm going to accommodate them. And that was it. And he said, well, we don't need to do that. I said, that's fine. That was probably the lowest point.
And that's what we did. Whatever they needed, beer, wine, whiskey, whatever the colonels needed, that's what we got. So Sergeant Major, the first sergeant, mess hall, we got all their food. And that's basically, every now and then, every now and then the camp would get overrun, and that was pretty bad, pretty bad. They'd come in, we'd fight all night long, with our camp there, and we'd wind up with 8 or 10 or 12 dead bodies, by morning. And the QCs, that's the Vietnamese, like MPs, they'd come in and get them and take them up, put them in bags and take them off. And that was pretty low, and then I lost a couple of good friends too over there during that particular time. And that's basically what I did the whole time I was there.
But I knew a lot of people that died, and it just, the Stars and Stripes, when you read it every morning, when I was at Thailand or whatever, plane shot down or whatever, somebody killed. I don't know if you've ever been over to Clemson, the Scroll of Honor, but I know a lot of people on that Scroll of Honor.
I only lost one high school mate over there. He was only there for 14 days. But it's the only one that I know of that I know, other than the crew members and stuff that are on the wall.
Well, I don't think we lost the war, but we did what we had to do. We did what we was told to do, and that's what we did. And wound up on the wrong end of the stick, but at least we did what we was told to do, and that was it,
The high point, probably R&R. I'll have to say that. I went on R&R, rest and recuperation, probably after my first tour, sometime in my second tour, and I went to Thailand and alone, and hopped the train and rode the train down from Thailand down to Singapore on the Malay Peninsula, and just stopped at towns on the way. And people were just fascinated with, why is this guy here? You're traveling alone. You knew I wasn't from, not quite sure if I was from the area, because there were dark-skinned people there. But once I opened my mouth, they knew darn well that I was not from the area. And it was fun. It's just met a lot of different people on the train riding down there.
There's sort of a changeover of feeling, because most of the people that I went in with, we were in the Army Security Agency, and it's a very elite group of soldiers who have top secret crypto clearances, and because of the need to have a top secret crypto clearance, most of the guys were college graduates or certainly had been through a lot of education, and we were all drafted because we finished up college and lost our deferments. And so we had the same kind of attitudes that we were doing a job. We had to be there. It was a very important job to do. But during the year that I was there, we started getting new recruits in, new people, our replacements were coming in. And I'll never forget an experience that I didn't even know what was going on. I had been overseas for 3 years, 3 consecutive years, and I hadn't been back stateside. And I saw, well, with all these new recruits coming in, the OIC told us we had to go out and search the barracks for pot. What, a cooking pot or something? I didn't know what he was talking about. I was totally out of it. I was so naive, it was ridiculous.
It's a good thing. I've got no problem with the draft as long as there's no war, because I think all those kids, like we had to go, and it was good for you. I seen an interview from a mother. She sent her son off. He was a brat, lazy, this, that, and the other. She listed in the article. And when he came home from Marine Corps boot camp, she could not believe it was the same kid. He had manners. He was polite. He worked hard. He didn't lay around. He didn't just watch TV. She said it was a totally different young man.
I actually enjoyed my military experience because my military experience was part of my pathway to bettering my life. I had some very difficult situations in Vietnam and suffer rather traumatically with dreams and nightmares because of the death and destruction that I saw in Vietnam. When I came home, I went back to school, went to the University of Georgia and got my bachelor's and master's degree, and actually ended up being a school superintendent and in a leadership role. Throughout my whole life, I denied being a Vietnam veteran until in 1993 some circumstances came out, and I was actually forced to expose myself because somebody questioned some missing parts in my resume. I then became active in Vietnam Veterans of America in '93 and have enjoyed that opportunity, the opportunity to serve other veterans.
Yes, well, you know, I got to tell you this story. When I was in recruiting in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I was a commander, my chief was over there, and we were eating breakfast. A lady walked up to me and said, "Baby killer." She said, we were in our Air Force uniform. And my chief, I always remember, you know, he said, well, we're proud to be able to, so you can say that. We're proud to be able to serve you, so you can say that.
Well, the Vietnam Veterans of America, it's not an association, sorry to correct you on that, but it is Vietnam Veterans of America. That organization was founded in 1979. A group of people got together and we all had a very similar issue with how we were treated while we were in the service and when we came back. And by 1983, we had our first convention. And at that convention, we adopted the slogan or the founding principle of our organization that never again will one generation of veterans be abandoned by another. Because we felt like we had been forsaken by the World War II and the Korean War vets. They wouldn't let us into the AMVETS or the American Legion or the VFW halls. We weren't soldiers. We didn't fight a war or something. I don't know what the problem was, but we weren't welcomed. So our organization undertook to change the image. I don't know if you recall, but back then we had a lot of people on the street corners begging for money, and they were wearing old fatigues and bandanas on their head and things like that, and they were getting an image, a sign that said, "Vietnam vet, please help." But we wanted to get rid of that image because that's a very small percentage of the people who fought there. So that was one of the big things we did, was to change the image of who a veteran is and how a veteran is treated. Now today, you see the results of our work. Everywhere you go, you hear stories like somebody giving up their first class seat to a soldier in uniform. Or if you see a soldier in uniform somewhere, 9 times out of 10, somebody come up to them and say, "Thank you for your service. You just did a little while ago." People are doing this. The whole attitude toward who a veteran is and who a soldier is has changed, and we respect them. And we feel that it's part of our organization that has made this happen. Now, we've had help with a lot of the other organizations, but we feel like we spearheaded the whole effort and made it happen.
And he didn't ask what service I was in, but he knew it. He knew I was. He dropped me off in Biltmore, and my mother and dad lived 4 miles from there. I needed time, so I walked. And my sister was going to work, and I didn't know it, had no idea. She was going to work, and she passed me on the road. And when she passed me, she recognized me about the same time I recognized her. And she crammed a 1955 Buick Special in park doing 40 miles an hour and left it with it still going down the road and tackled me on the other side of the road. And that was my welcome home. My family welcomed me home. And at the time, it was pretty darn good.